So the same baseball is thrown straight up at 49 meters per second, and this time we want to know its final velocity right when it hits the ground, when it goes all the way up and comes back to where it started from. Now let's do a little bit of estimating like we did in the last one first, just to get our feet wet, just to see how this question should play out. Remember how we proceeded before. We assumed gravity was approximately negative 10 meters per second squared, or negative 10 meters per second each second. So my velocity is changing by negative 10 meters per second every second. And recall how we did it before. We assumed it was 50 to start with. 1 second later, I add negative 10, I'm at 40, 30, 20, 10, and I'm at the apex where my final velocity is 0. Now what happens in the next second? Well, if I'm at 0 meters per second, I'm not going to hover there. 1 second later, I add another negative 10, and now the ball is going back down. So 1 second later, after it reaches the summit, it's going negative 10. 2 seconds later, I add another negative 10, and I'm at negative 20, negative 30, negative 40, and just before it hits the ground, lo and behold, I'm back at approximately negative 50, and you can probably guess if I didn't approximate gravity, it would be negative 49 meters per second. Makes sense. There is some symmetry involved with this question. If I started at 49 and it goes up and back along the same path, it should end hitting the ground equal and opposite, negative 49 meters per second. Now let's solve this one using our equations, and then we'll move on. So I've got V initial, V final, acceleration, time, and displacement. Now we're trying to find V final. V initial is positive 49. V final is what we're looking for. My acceleration is negative 9.8 meters per second squared. And if you'll recall in the previous question, it took 5 seconds to go from the bottom all the way up to the apex. And because of the symmetry, if it starts at the apex and falls back down, that should take another 5 seconds. So the total time of flight would be 10. Now, we don't know our displacement, but in fact, don't forget it's not distance, it's displacement. And if I end at exactly the same level that I started with, my final displacement is actually 0. I'm going to put a star beside that. We could use that information and find V final, in other words. Let's choose not to use that information and use what we've got above. So we're trying to find V final. We want to avoid equations with D in it. So I'll do this. V final is V initial plus AT. V initial is 49. Acceleration is negative 9.8. Time was 10 seconds. And I get 49 minus 98, which is negative 49 meters per second. And the negative just simply means that it's down. It's moving on its way down.